Good morning and welcome everyone to day 2 of the Inclusive Leadership Summit. We are so excited to have you all. For those of you joining us for the first time, welcome. For those of you who joined us yesterday, welcome back. We're excited to jump into the second day. We're going to kick it off with career insider tips on how to build an online brand with LinkedIn. During this session, you'll be guided through strategies to build your online brand with LinkedIn. Now, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to University of Phoenix career advisor and coach, Ricklin Woods.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'll go ahead and introduce myself before we get into the information for today. Again, Ricklin Woods, career advisor with University of Phoenix. I have over, I think now I'm at about 16 years of overall experience in human resources. I started out my career as a recruiter, and I was sourcing top talent, like many of you here in the audience today, through LinkedIn. LinkedIn is one of my favorite networking sites. I use it both personally and professionally, and I think it's one of the best career management tools that we have at our disposal. And so I encourage all of my clients, now that I'm doing career advising, to really make sure that they are spending time building their LinkedIn profile so they have a stellar professional presence, so that employers can find them on LinkedIn, and also so they can connect with peers in their industry or people who they'd like to get to know, perhaps in an industry that they're looking to transition to. So we'll go ahead and get into it. What I'd like to do is maybe take some pauses throughout the presentation for questions rather than waiting to the end. We're going to go through some various strategies for how to build your online brand. So I'll pause after each strategy and see if there are questions. Make sure that if you do have questions, that you're leaving them in the Q&A section, not the chat itself, because sometimes the questions can get lost in the chat. But if you drop them there in the Q&A section, then when we pause, we can go through those questions and I'll be happy to answer them for you. And then when we finish, we'll see if there are any outstanding questions that we did not answer, if we still have time. So thanks for being here today. So what we're going to go through today is how to use your LinkedIn profile for professional networking. Most professionals today know that LinkedIn is a place where you need to at least have some information about your work history, and they know that employers do use it to try to connect with people. But more importantly than using LinkedIn just for networking, it's really about building your personal brand and really making sure that you implement some of these 5 strategies that can help you really stand out amongst your competition, especially if you're in the middle of job searching or if you're just looking overall to grow as a professional in your industry. The 5 strategies that we're going to go through is how to go about creating a stellar profile, how to compose a compelling headline and summary and why that's really important, how to connect with people and companies of interest, and then how to grow your network. And lastly, the importance of participating and staying engaged. Having a LinkedIn profile is not about kind of fixing it and forgetting it. Like, you create the profile, but you have to participate, stay engaged, cultivate that professional network if you really want to get the most out of your LinkedIn profile. I think most of us know, again, LinkedIn is the largest professional networking site, primarily designed to connect people to job opportunities. But you can do a whole lot more on LinkedIn, from learning from others within your community, taking advantage of the LinkedIn Learning platform. So, again, I see it as a full career management tool where you can learn many different things, connect with different people, learn about companies, and it's a great way, again, to grow your brand and make connections with folks who may be able to put you in touch with others for potential opportunities. Some interesting stats about LinkedIn that you may not know: that LinkedIn has 750 million members worldwide and growing. 4 out of 5 LinkedIn members do drive business decisions. So there are folks you're connected to. While they might not be recruiters, they could be hiring managers who are going to make the ultimate business decision in terms of hiring new employees. So keep that in mind. And we'll talk a little bit more about who to connect with and when you should connect with them as we go along. Right now, 65% of recruiters use LinkedIn to find and vet candidates. That's why it's so important to have a profile that's fully built out with searchable content because that's how recruiters find people. A lot of recruiters are looking for passive candidates who may not be actively applying for positions. And so they do that through doing kind of a detailed search with various keywords, et cetera. So, in the same way you might want to have keywords in your resume, you're going to want to have keywords throughout your LinkedIn profile. It kind of works the same way. And then there are 50 million plus companies that are listed on LinkedIn as well. So, one of the things I do work with my clients on is developing kind of their target employer list. So, if you're actively seeking employment or looking to shift careers, one strategy to follow is to identify the companies you want to work for. Make a list of those companies, connect with them on LinkedIn, follow their content, keep up with what's going on with the company, and even engage in some of their content. That way, you may become a familiar face, a familiar name with that company should you decide to apply for a role with them. So, again, I see LinkedIn as a comprehensive career management tool. And you get to connect with professionals, learn new skills that can help you to succeed in your career and build your online brand. So, what is my personal brand? I think that's a common question that people ask. You typically hear about branding through the lens of, big companies with brand names that we're all probably familiar with. But as individuals, we also have a personal brand. Your personal brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. That was said by Jeff Bezos, which most people know who that guy is. And I think this is such a true statement. I actually had an experience a few months ago where someone who I'd worked with as a career advisor, she sent me a text message with a screenshot of a chat that was going on one of the platforms. I think it was a Slack platform. And within that platform, there was a question was asked. I'm looking to transition in HR. Anybody know of a career coach or career advisor that I could reach out to? And in that chat, there were a couple of replies with my name, like you should reach out to Ricklin Woods. I think she's great. And so when she took a screenshot and sent it to me, she said, I just want you to see that this is what people are saying about you when you're not in the room. And so that's when it really even clicked for me that, wow, that really is a true statement that is your brand. Like if others didn't have a positive experience with me, then more than likely my name wouldn't have come up in that conversation. So when you think about your brand, it's really about from a professional standpoint, typically, what do you want companies, people you've worked with, potential employers to know about you? What is that makes you memorable? So that's pretty much what your personal brand is all about. And so there are ways you can showcase that through your LinkedIn profile, which we'll get into. So there are 5 strategies that we're going to go through to help you craft your online brand. Again, creating a stellar profile, which if you were to kind of explore LinkedIn and look at different profiles for different people, people have their profiles built out at different levels, so to speak. Some people have just the basic information, their employer, their current job title, maybe have a photo, maybe not. But then there are others who spent a good bit of time in really crafting that profile to make sure that the content is full. They filled out all sections of the LinkedIn profile. They've even achieved all-star status, which is what LinkedIn identifies as someone having a fully complete profile. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about how to compose a compelling headline and summary. And I'll be honest, with the clients I work with, this is probably the most challenging part of creating your brand online with LinkedIn. And the reason for that is because most people in general struggle with talking about themselves in a way where they feel like they're promoting themselves. Um, I just think it's human nature for us to not want to necessarily boast about ourselves, but that's really what LinkedIn and the LinkedIn profile is all about is creating a profile that's going to be attractive and going to be compelling and attract recruiters or others in your field to your profile. So we'll talk about some ways to do that. And then we'll talk about connecting with people. And when we say connecting with people and companies of interest, we don't just mean hitting the connect button. We're talking about a little bit more strategic ways of sending a personalized invitation and really cultivating relationships with people and even with companies. We'll talk about how to grow your network because that's important too. If you, this is a professional networking site, and if you don't have very many connections and you're not actively working to grow that network, then you may not get as much benefit from the platform as you would if you took the time to grow your network. So we'll touch on that. And then lastly, we'll talk about the importance and how to participate and stay engaged. That's often a challenge sometimes for people also because they don't want to treat LinkedIn like any other social networking platform. And so they're not quite sure, how do I participate? This is a professional platform. My employers may be following my profile, or how do you participate in a professional way and stay engaged with people kind of in this virtual world that you're not seeing in person. So we'll cover those 5 strategies, and then we're going to pause after each to see if you have any questions. So if you come up with questions as I'm going through the material, be sure to make a note, and just a reminder to make sure that you put the questions in the Q&A section. So strategy 1, creating a stellar profile. There are some criteria that you want to keep in mind when putting together a stellar profile. The first one, which might seem obvious, is your profile photo. There are a lot of people who opt not to put a profile photo on for various reasons. Oftentimes it's because they're a little concerned that potential employers might make decisions based on what they see on their profile. So if they see that I'm a person of color, will that be a detractor? So they'd rather not put the photo there. But the reality is LinkedIn, again, is a networking site. It's about connecting with people. And if you don't have a profile photo there, it can make it a little bit more difficult to actually kind of connect, especially virtually when you're not having conversation. All you have to go by is that photo and the content that you have on your profile. So as you could see in this example, Catherine's profile photo is professional photo. She's looking straight on, she's smiling, and so she really has a warm, welcoming profile photo. And that's really important. In fact, profiles that have a profile photo are more likely to be approached by recruiters and others because people don't generally want to just connect with a name and not a face per se. And then having your education section there is key, especially again, if you're in job search mode and you're applying for positions where education is a requirement. You want potential employers and recruiters to be able to see that right off the bat, that you have the educational requirements for the role. It's also a great way to connect with alumni. So if you are a student of University of Phoenix or alumni of University of Phoenix, you can actually search for others who are also students or alumni and connect with them that way, or whatever university you may have attended. The same will apply. So having that education piece there really helps in terms of building out your profile, but also how you connect with people. You also want to include your location and your industry. Location is important because when recruiters are doing searches for talent, they're typically doing a search by location. Even in this kind of virtual world we're in now, where a lot more employers are hiring remote employees, oftentimes there still could be limitations in terms of which state you can work in for that company as remote employers. So if they can't see where you're working, well, one, you won't come up in their search if they're searching for a particular location. And so that's really important there. Industry is also helpful, again, because as you're showing up in recruiter searches, you want it to be clear what industry you're in, so that you are able to be identified for potential opportunities. And a common question I've gotten is, well, how many connections do you need to have? Because LinkedIn has grown so much, there are people who are very active, who are kind of influencers on LinkedIn, and they have thousands and thousands of followers, but you don't need to have that many. What LinkedIn kind of recognizes as a good number of connections for a good profile is 50 or more connections. When you have 50 or more connections, it also shows people who visit your page really how well connected you are, or how you're using the profile from a professional networking perspective. If the profile only has 5 connections, then it might send a signal that, well, this profile is not really active because the person's not making any connections. So something to keep in mind. And then you do have the opportunity to add your skills. And so this is useful because, again, when recruiters are searching, they do oftentimes search by skills. And so if you've identified with skills that they've put in their search terms, as well as some of the other information, you're likely to come up in their search and be able to get that outreach from a recruiter. So you want to have at least a minimum of 3 skills listed, but you can do up to 50 skills. So make sure that the skills that you're listing, especially if you're looking to make a pivot into a different industry, that you're identifying the skills that you have that are transferable to the industry that you're looking to transition to. If you've learned new skills, but you've not yet done the job, but maybe you've done a webinar, maybe you've done a LinkedIn Learning or some other type of continuing education, and you now have that skill set, make sure that you're adding it as well. And then you certainly want to have your current position with a description. One of the common things I see is that people will list their job titles and companies they've worked for, but they don't include the description. And the description is important. And just a quick note there, you don't need to, well, you probably don't want to just copy and paste from your resume with that description. What you want to do is do a brief summary of what you've been responsible for at your current employer or prior employers. But keep in mind, you want to make sure that it's still keyword rich, because what you have in the description will also show up in recruiter searches. And if you want to have what's considered kind of an all-star profile or a stellar profile, you want to at least have your current position as well as 2 past positions. Very similar to kind of resume guidance that you may have had. It's good to see 10 to 15 years of work experience, especially relevant work experience, on your LinkedIn profile. So we kind of talked about pictures. LinkedIn also does have a neat opportunity for you to add. There's a featured section where you can actually upload videos, you can upload presentations to showcase your work. The recommendation section is really important too. So because potential employers do look at that, so they can informally see, do you have any recommendations from former employers? Have you given any recommendations for people? So those are things that kind of tell a bigger career story and share much more information than what you'd be able to kind of with the limited 2-page kind of resume that most of us traditionally have. So before we get into strategy 2 and talking in more detail about a compelling headline and summary, are there any questions so far?
We do have a couple in the chat or in the Q&A. So
Okay.
one is, any recommendations for someone who is avoiding a stalker or a passive user for them not to find their LinkedIn profile?
That's a really good question. There are a lot of privacy settings that you could use. Now, whether or not that's also going to limit other people from finding your page, that is something that you would have to consider too. So that one's kind of a little bit more complex question. I would love to take that one offline and then follow up to see with some of those privacy sections, like what would be kind of the downside of having them. But it's a great question. I've actually had others to express that concern before. But there are definitely a lot of different privacy features that you can use to keep your page from being public, but that also might cause some limitations in terms of how even potential employers might find you. So that may be a matter of really deciding, what's most important, and if definitely your safety and well-being is going to be most important. But can we make a note of that so I can just kind of follow up on that one?
Yep, definitely will do.
Okay.
Next question, for the education space, when you have multiple degrees or levels of education, how do you know what to list?
So in terms of degrees, I would certainly list them all, because you can list, I don't believe there's a limit to the number of education that you can list there. Oftentimes people have certifications though in varied fields. So my guidance is usually, again, because the purpose of your brand is to attract opportunities potentially for your desired career objective. So if you have a certification, maybe you did something, maybe you were a CNA, a nurse's assistant, 5 years ago, but now you're doing something totally different. You're in project management. It may not be beneficial to list that nursing certification there, or kind of nursing education potentially. But if we're talking about higher level bachelor's, master's degree, you should list all of those. But if you have like industry specific certifications, licenses, things like that, you may only want to limit them to the roles you're trying to attract. Because if you list information on your profile for something you did, before, and now you're trying to do something different, you might find yourself getting outreach from people who are looking for someone to do work that you don't want to do anymore.
Next, is putting an assignment that you perform really well on an acceptable place to put it on your page? And by assignment, she meant a visual project or design.
Yeah, absolutely. So in that featured section, it gives you the option to upload various forms of media. So that's where I've typically seen kind of like project work or portfolio type work people include there. Also, within each job, I believe you can actually maybe add, depending on the size of the file, but you can add like some supporting documentation for a particular company if you want to label that work with a specific company. The featured section is just going to be all encompassing. So you'll want to decide, do you just want to put this kind of at the top of your page, or do you want to insert that where you actually did the work? But you can certainly add that to your profile.
And along with that, there's another question that says, is it best to mask or hide your current company names or information when you're uploading your work?
In terms of uploading kind of the like portfolio type work? Is that the question?
Yeah, something they did at the office.
Yeah. I would say, well, you want to be sure that you're not sharing anything proprietary that you shouldn't be sharing anyway, rather than just, covering the company's name. So be sure that that is something that you own, that you can share. If it's not, then I wouldn't recommend sharing it at all, even hiding the company's name. So it really just depends on what it is. Like I've seen a lot of people who have their own GitHub or their own website where they've uploaded various types of projects that they've done. You can actually upload the link to those separate profiles. So that may be an option too, as opposed to just uploading it to the website. But that's definitely a slippery slope in terms of sharing what might really be proprietary because you worked for the company, you created it for the company. So that's something you want to do a little bit more research on before posting it.
Perfect. And there's a couple more questions in there, but I think you're going to hit a few of them later in your speech, or in your presentation. So if you want to keep going, and then I'll pop back in at the next session.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, now my slide is not cooperating here. I'm going to stop sharing for a second and then redo it because I'm not sure why. Okay, I think I got it there. All right, it did something a little strange for me. Sorry about that. All right, so we're going to talk about the anatomy of a headline and summary. So What I most commonly see here in the headline section is people will use their current job title, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with doing that. However, if you want to have a more compelling headline and also maybe put in some key words, you have 220 characters with which to do that. So as you can see in the example, Catherine does list her title first, Vice President of Marketing. That could be potentially her aspiring title too. Some people will use that approach if the aspiration is to be a VP of marketing. Now, I would say you got to be realistic there, and that perhaps she was a vice president of marketing before, but changed jobs and she's not anymore. I'm not saying that if you've never worked in marketing before, you should list on there that you're a VP of marketing. You'll have to look at your overall career experience to decide what would be the best title to put there. But she also adds a few emojis to kind of brighten up that the headline, and then talks about consumer products marketing lead, which those are keywords that if a recruiter is looking to find someone who works in marketing and has worked on consumer products and they put that as part of their search, she might be likely to show up in their search, especially if she's in the area that they're searching in. But then she also talks about what she does as a VP of marketing in the consumer products marketing space. She polishes and transforms brands, products, and teams for greater market share and increased sales. So really in that one line blurb, she makes it very clear what her area of specialty is, what she does, how she does it. And so that is compelling enough to where it will potentially draw someone in to say, hey, we need to talk with her. Now, the other area that's usually much more challenging for people is the profile summary, which is right underneath. That's where you have 2,000 characters. And most of the profiles that I've seen in working with clients, no one really uses all of that space. Because again, talking about yourself is not always the easiest thing to do. And so when you're thinking about the profile summary, one way I like to describe it to clients that I work with, this LinkedIn profile is really like your personal website. It's not your resume. It's not a digital version of your resume. It is kind of your online home where people can come and learn more about you. So not just about what you do professionally, but some people opt to put in, what some of their personal interests are, hobbies, what they might be. Kind of sprinkle that in a little bit so that there's get to know a little bit about your person. It's also a great place where you can showcase your commitment to diversity and inclusion. Here is where I've seen quite a few people talk about, maybe what they're most passionate about, what drives them to do the work they do every day, what they do to foster a diverse and inclusive work environment. So it's a great place to show that. So if companies are looking to hire someone who shares the same commitment to diversity and inclusion as they do, having that in your profile really may help you stand out amongst the competition who may not be talking about the same thing. And so when you talk about creating a headline, again, when I talk about keyword rich and being searchable, similar to the example, here's a good formula to follow. Because sometimes it's hard to know, what do I write in that little space with only 220 characters? But think of it as the who, what, and how. Who are you? Are you an aspiring accountant? Are you a business analyst? Are you a vice president of marketing? What do you know? Like in the prior example, she knew consumer products marketing. So in this example here, do you know, are you QuickBooks certified? Do you know benefits administration? Again, think of it through the lens of the job that you are hoping to get. And if you're, looking to transition within the same industry, you can focus on the work that you're doing currently. Or if you are looking to make a pivot, what have you learned through education? What have you learned, even on the job that you believe has prepared you for that next level job, etc., that you can capture that in your headline. And then this is optional, kind of including that additional tagline, like who you help, how you're helping organizations be better. So in this example here, this person is a certified financial planner. Um, I help families build wealth and eliminate debt. A realtor might say helping first time home buyers purchase their dream home. So, whatever industry you're in, whatever role you're in, think of a way that you can kind of summarize what you do, how you help, how you serve, how you're helping your organization be better. That could become part of your tagline. Here are some additional examples to look at. So the first one is for a student. May say that they're a digital marketing student interested in content marketing and social media. The second one is for someone who may not be working at the time, but they focus on kind of what their area of expertise is. I'm an IT professional, network administration, project management, virtualization. So just kind of some keywords around their area of interest and probably where they feel like they will thrive the most if given the opportunity. And this is for someone who's currently employed. I might list that I'm an HR manager. With those dividers there, I specialize in employee onboarding and engagement and corporate culture, as an example. And then this is where the kind of more the tagline method that's optional. You can say higher educational professional, online learning emphasis, helping adult learners succeed from college to career. And these slides are available for you guys to download. The link should be up under the presentation. So if you haven't noticed that yet, I just thought I might want to, because there's a lot of information. So I thought it might be good for you to know if you're taking notes, you will have access to the slides as well. Then the summary. Again, the summary is a little bit more challenging. You got 2,000 characters of space to work with. And it's like, what do I say about myself? What do people want to know about me? Well, the best thing to do is to start with an attention grabbing lead. And there's no one approach to this. I've looked at various LinkedIn profiles and I've seen people take different approaches where they may start off with a question. They may start off asking, again, their kind of potential employer, um, how would you like to hire someone with stellar experience in X? That may be an intro to grab someone's attention and to keep reading more. Or you might start it with something along the lines of, I've completed X number of projects, um, you know, by the deadline with 100% accurate or something to that effect. So if you think it through the lens of what can I say that's going to pique someone's interest enough to keep reading and learn more about me. And of course, you want to try to make it as relevant to, again, your target role or what you would want people to reach out to you for or connect with you for. You wouldn't necessarily want to have a attention grabbing lead that's totally something different, not related in a professional sense in any manner. You don't want to lead talking about your hobbies and things that you do outside of work, because again, it is a professional networking site. You can certainly add that in. I've seen a lot of people in their summary with that, where they may say something like outside of work on the weekends, you can find me, on the beach, reading a good book. And that's helpful and serves a purpose too for just kind of getting a sense of, what kind of person you are, what types of things do you enjoy doing. And then in the body, after you add that attention grabbing lead, here is where you can describe in more detail what you talked about in the headline. More of a description of what you do or what you aspire to do if you're looking to make a career transition. And then some career highlights that are relevant to your brand. So, what are some accomplishments that you're proud of? That's what you really want to focus on there. Or not just that you're proud of, but what are some accomplishments that are going to be relevant to the job that you're seeking? Whether it's accomplishments or highlights through on the job, or even if you had some projects that you completed on a volunteer basis or that you completed as a student. That's a good place to talk about those kind of highlights that will make someone say, okay, wow, this person does have some experience or exposure to what we're looking for. And then what's really helpful is the statement of purpose or passion about your career. People want to hire and connect with people who are passionate about what they do. In the same way that you would probably want to connect with others who are passionate about what they do and deeply committed. So here is where, as I mentioned, you might weave in some information about your commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how you demonstrate that in the work that you do, how you work inclusively with teammates. If you're a people leader, how you work to get to know each individual on your team, and really see them for who they are and support them for who they are. So those are some things you can also include in that headline section. And then a conclusion is really nice to add. And when we talk about a call to action, it's like, hey, now that they've read your summary, what do you want them to do? So if you're actively looking for work, that's when you can invite them to reach out to you. Some people actually do list their personal email and a phone number. Now, again, that's public information. So only if you're open to doing that. But I have seen some profiles to do that if they're really wanting someone to connect with them. And then, as I mentioned, you can share info about who you are outside of work. Another call to action could be um, connect with me. Maybe you're not actively looking for employment, but you'd like to grow your network within your kind of career or industry. So you can leave something to say if you also work in human resources. I'm always looking to connect with other HR professionals. Feel free to connect with me. That's another way you can have a call to action. Here's an example of a summary. And again, this person leads with a question. You can certainly read this in the handout that you're going to receive. But imagine, coming across someone's LinkedIn profile, and the first thing you see is, what if I said I can help you nearly double your website leads without spending a single additional advertising dollar? Some say that's impossible, but this is my specialty, making the most of your advertising dollars. So if this was a marketing, I'm assuming marketing professional. So it's very clear within this first short paragraph, kind of what they do. So think about what you do and how are you helping the organization that you serve. That's a great way to decide what you're going to open up your profile with. Again, as an example, you don't have to do it exactly this way, but this is a good way to kind of draw someone in with that attention grabbing lead. And then this person goes on further to say, most marketers abide by a simple formula, spend more, get more. But I'm here to say that doesn't always have to be the case. Rather than spending money on advertising or trying to find that elusive yet critical channel mix, get the most of your website, make it do the legwork. So this person is essentially talking about their differentiator. Like they're not about spending more, getting more. Here is the approach that they prefer. And so you can also apply this in your line of work. What do you do that you believe you do really well, perhaps in comparison to others? And then there's a brief summary towards the end where the person talks about, for over a decade or nearly a decade, I've led web development teams to accomplish that very feat, to convert better. And so they're really selling why someone should reach out to them for marketing support. So I hope that you find that to be a good example of how you can work on that summary section in a way that works best for your industry or your job that you're in. So before we get into connecting with people, I want to take a brief pause and see if there are any questions regarding the headline and the summary that I can answer.
Yes, we have quite a few. Some of them are going to put together because they're kind of all the same little theme.
Okay.
What if I have two career paths that I want to go down, or I'm changing careers? How do we track those opportunities? Is it best to list just one of those directions we want to go, or is it okay to list both?
Very good question. So I will say it's usually best when you have one direction. Think of it like if you were looking for someone to do maintenance on your home, you're probably going to want someone who specializes in a particular area. If you're looking for an electrician, you're looking for an electrician. You're not looking for an electrician who is also a plumber, usually. So that would be like my number one recommendation, to be clear about who you are, what you do, and how you help. Think about that last example of the summary section where her whole summary was about what she does in marketing. So if you confuse the reader and they're not sure exactly where your interests lie, what you're really good at, it may just, prevent people from wanting to reach out. Now, could you do two? Yes, but understand that it just may detract from people who are looking for somebody who's really specialized in what they do.
Okay. Another question is, okay, for those of us who are working in the corporate sector, and in addition to being an entrepreneur, how do you avoid getting the spammy MLM based recruiters while showcasing your entire profile or portfolio of work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I get a lot of spam emails too. I don't know that there's a way to avoid getting the emails, because if they see that content on, a lot of times you'll get emails from people and they haven't really read your profile, to be honest. You're like, why are you emailing this? So in terms of avoiding the spam, I don't have any strategies for how you would do that, because a lot of the LinkedIn has a platform that people use for sales, and they find people based on various criteria.
And then I'll let you continue because I know you still got a presentation to go. So go through that and we'll just rapid
Okay.
fire them at the end.
All right. So connecting with people. This is often a common question, like how do I connect with people? Do I just, randomly send the connection request? There is some strategy in how you connect, but the importance is that you are connecting with the people and companies of interest. So if you're in a particular industry, it's really good to connect with others who are in the industry, in your industry, perhaps doing the same work that you're doing. Or if you're looking for a long-term kind of career strategy, even connecting with people who might be at that next level, and you may want to connect with them so you can really get a sense of how do I move up and advance to where they are, so to speak. Connecting with the companies. If you've identified, your top 10 companies that you'd love to work with if given the opportunity, you want to make sure you're connecting with them. And then the other thing, you can actually gain wisdom, insight from connecting with thought leaders and following their posts. So whether it's company posts or people that you've connected with, and if you're on LinkedIn, you've probably seen where LinkedIn has shifted a little bit and people are sharing more content that might be personal to them, sharing insights about what's going on in the world around us, and sharing industry expertise. So you can even learn just by being connected and following or connecting with people within your industry. So if you've been on the LinkedIn platform, whether mobile or desktop, there's a LinkedIn feed. That feed you pretty much kind of design based on who you follow, the content that you interact with, whether you're liking posts or commenting posts. The algorithm, as many of you are probably familiar with, you kind of create the feed that you get based on who you're engaging with and connecting with. So when you log onto your daily feed, you'll see new posts from companies that you're following, from people that you're following or connected to. And it's a great way to stay up to date with what's going on with your network, job changes, etc. And I'm going to go right into this because it kind of ties together in terms of making the new connections, and then we can pause for questions. But a common question again is, how do I make connections? So within LinkedIn, you can just click the connect button, but I've heard many people say if someone just sends a connect without a note, they're less likely to accept it, because at that point it feels spammy, like you're just connecting just for connecting. So you'll see in the example that a personalized note was created with kind of the reason why you're connecting, or where there is this kind of connection point. So, hi Eve, nice meeting you at the Career Day event and touching base today. I'd like to connect. I look forward to future conversations. Have a good week. So that's a nice inviting way to connect with someone. There's some connection. Okay, they were at the Career Day event as well. Makes sense to connect with them, as opposed to just hitting the connect button. So when I connect with people, I literally try to send a personalized note with every connection request. I don't just connect. Also within LinkedIn, if you can just hit that connect button and connect with too many people in a day, you'll get a notice from LinkedIn like you're doing too many connects in one day. This feels spammy. So be intentional about who you're connecting with and why you're connecting with them, and you're likely to have more people be receptive of your outreach. And then another great way to connect on LinkedIn is to request informational interviews, or, just uh, conversations for information. It doesn't have to be a formal interview per se, but here's an example of a message that was sent. It says, "Hi Haley, I found your profile while researching medical sales professionals in Phoenix. I hope you don't mind me reaching out, but I'm fascinated by the work you do. I'd love to get your insight on this career path. Might you be open to a 15-minute phone chat?" And I've found that a lot of times people do kind of like talking about themselves, especially when they get to brag about their work and brag about their career journey. So many people are open to having conversations, especially if you let them know, like, I am looking to do what you do or get into the same industry you're in. I'd love to hear your story, your journey, how you got to where you are. You'd be surprised how many people would absolutely be okay with reaching out. Another way I've used this feature is if there is a company that I'm interested in working for, or maybe considering applying to, I've reached out to current employees to say, "Hey, what has your experience been like working with the organization? I see that you do X and you've been there for 10 years. I'd love to hear whatever insight you have if you're open to sharing." And people have obliged and provided some insight there. So again, it's just such a great tool for overall career management. So, of course, connecting with people you already know, that's easy enough. I think many of us do that, especially in the professional sphere. But you can also join groups and have conversations there. Groups are starting to become more active, I've seen on LinkedIn. But if you want to search for groups kind of by your industry, maybe even by job title, and you might find several groups there to enjoy. But what I've seen is that's a great place too, where people ask questions. They may even ask problem solving questions. I'm dealing with this project and I'm having trouble doing X. Anybody have any ideas for how I might troubleshoot it? And so it's a great way to learn as well as participate in whatever ongoing conversations there might be related to your industry. And then we are at the final strategy to participate and stay engaged. So again, you don't want to just create this beautiful profile, get your online presence all intact and then just disappear from the platform. When people look at your profile, especially recruiters, one of the things they want to see is how active you are, mainly because they want to see if I reach out, what's the likelihood that this person is going to respond. So if there's been no activity, either engaging with posts or making posts yourself for some time, then it may look like it's just a kind of an absent profile that nobody's managing or attending to, if that makes sense. So the more you're able to interact, the better. Now, be clear, I'm not saying spending all your time on LinkedIn, but checking in once or twice a day shouldn't take too much time, out of your day to do that. But here, if you see in this example, Catherine makes this post. She's talking about her book, the new rules of work, and then there's a comment there where this person says it's been on their Amazon list for a while, but now it's been ordered. So here's what's interesting about comments that a lot of people don't know. It's not showing in this example, but when you list a comment on a post that someone has made, your headline typically shows up under your name too. And imagine if you've got, there's an active post with quite a few people viewing comments or sharing their comments themselves. Many people will go to your profile based on what your headline is. So if you've got an appealing headline, you're talking about what you do, what you're aspiring to do, there could be somebody in that comment section who see that and they're like, let me hop over to Catherine's profile so I can see what she's got going on. So that headline serves kind of numerous purposes, so to speak. And by commenting on your network's post, it actually shows that you're engaged. And even though we're not seeing people face to face, you do get familiar with profile photos. And so if you're actively engaging on, say, a company's website and their post, or others in your professional network in the same industry, and then you might look up 3 months from now and someone's posting a position, hey, we're hiring, and then you may chime in and say, wow, that's something I've been looking to do. And they remember you because they've seen you post just maybe in their comments before. They're like, okay, great, send me your resume, or I'll get your resume to whomever might be the hiring person. So there's so much value to when you're actually communicating in the comments, which that gets a little scary for some people because they don't want to be on LinkedIn all day. They don't want their employer to see what they're posting. But as long as you're posting in a professional realm and you're talking about things that matter to your industry, it's perfectly okay, and you shouldn't be concerned about that. And it actually helps for people, to know who you are, so to speak. And at the end of the day, people hire people. The old rule of thumb, it's not as much who you know, but not what you know, but who you know, still rings true today. So that's why it's so important to grow your network. But also, you want to make sure you're adding value to your network, not just taking, right? So even sharing information. So if you have original content, original, thoughts that you want to share, that's professional and maybe about your industry or work that you do, feel free to share it. If you'd rather just share maybe articles, like you read an article, like in this example, Catherine shares an article about resilience, and she adds a little bit of her own commentary with a quote from the article at the top. And so what this shows people in your network is that, you are a thought leader. You're reading information that's related to your industry. You're sharing it with others so that they can learn from it as well. And it just helps you to really show up as someone who has something to offer beyond just your work skills. But here is what I have to offer as a professional in this space. The other thing you can do to add value to your network is, the act of giving. So not just receiving, but giving. You can endorse other skills or even write a recommendation for someone that you've worked with or engaged with. And people generally find that to be helpful. And then as we are about to close, I think I have arrived at my last slide, so we'll go to any additional questions. But University of Phoenix does offer a great deal of support in terms of helping you with networking, whether that's through connecting with other students, alumni, and even employers. We can help with job search and application resources, career research, planning and development, and of course, career advising appointments where you can make an appointment with myself or one of my amazing colleagues. So I know that was a lot of information in what feels like a short amount of time. I hope there was value in it for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that we have remaining.
Casey, you're on mute.
Man, I just read a great question. So we do have quite a few questions. I'll get through as many as I can, and then we might just send them to you so that you can reply, and we'll post the answers.
Okay, great.
What is your position on including lifestyle choices such as LGBTQ, IAA plus status, or politics?
I think one of the key components of inclusivity is really individuality. And so I encourage my clients to be true to themselves, to be authentic. And if those are things that are important to them and they want others to understand and know kind of where they're coming from, to include it. Because you want to make sure that, especially I've heard people say, like from a job seeking standpoint, that they want to kind of keep those things private so that it doesn't stand in the way of them getting potential opportunities. But what I try to encourage them is that, you want to be who you are now after you've landed the job or what have you. So definitely showcase those things. Companies, especially today, which I think is a very positive thing, are much more committed to creating workplaces that are diverse, inclusive, and equitable. So I think showcasing how that's important to you, what it means to you, how it affects you in your everyday life. I think that is important if you're comfortable. I don't encourage people to do it if they're not comfortable, because there could be a downside to it. Maybe not everybody's going to be open to it. And so maybe that person who has an issue with it may not reach out to you for a job. But I would say that that's their loss. And you want to work for an organization anyway who's going to embrace you fully, all of you, just as you are.
Perfect. In line with strategy number 5, how do I find networking events that fall within my industry or interest?
Yeah. Well, LinkedIn has a great search tool. In their search feature, you can search a lot there. You can search for events by topic. So if there's a particular topic of interest, you can search for events that way. Groups are a great way. So if you're connected with groups, they're often posting when there are events that are coming up. If there are trade associations associated with your industry, following those sites on LinkedIn, and they'll post and share when there are new events that way as well.
And then I'm going to combine 2 questions. One says, should we accept all business connections that reach out to us in LinkedIn, even if we don't know them? And then the other is kind of tagging onto that is, should we be deleting those that are no longer part of our, our goals or our interests?
So that's a good question. I would say you should really vet anybody before you accept their request. Because again, we talked earlier about things that could be spammy. So if you see from that person's profile that their primary focus is, multi-level marketing or recruiting people in that way, then you may decide that person is not necessarily going to be beneficial or see the value in your content either. So that's someone I may not connect with. But I would say take really a holistic approach. Even if you don't see the value or benefit of this connection today, could there possibly be value later? Because remember, people hire people change jobs all the time. So that person who you may have been hesitant to accept their connection request, they may change jobs and wind up at one of your top companies that you want to work at. So you want to keep that in mind too. And I also think you do need to be constantly kind of cleaning up your profile. So if you look at your feed and you're getting content from people that you don't appreciate or who you'd rather not see content from, then that should be kind of your guide with whether or not you stay connected with them. There is also a way to hide comments or posts on your feed. So I think there are 3 dots there. If you're looking at a post and you're like, why am I even getting this? I didn't subscribe to this, so to speak. You can click on those 3 dots and it'll give you the option like, I don't want to see this, or not something that I'm interested in. So that's another way to kind of clean up your feeds, so to speak, and make sure that you're getting content that you're only really interested in and see value in.
Okay. And we have about a minute before the next session starts. So
okay.
We will send these questions to Ricklin and post them on her responses underneath the chat as soon as she has a chance to do that. Look within the next week. We got to give her a little time because there's quite a few questions left. Thank you for joining our early morning session. Now, in the main event or in the main stage, there should be our general session. Please join us there. Thank you.